Welcome all to my paranormal closet where the stories and magic take place. Today's guest has a show of his own called Talking Paranormal. He's a paranormal investigator with his own team called Whitehouse Investigations. And recently he wrote his own book called Into the Darkness. Love that name, which chronicles becoming a ghost hunter. Please join me in welcoming Chris Whitehouse. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, how are you doing?
Very good.
Thanks
As
for
a
having me.
paranormal investigator myself, my team and I look to the more traditional methods used, such as our own gifted senses, of course, and an ordinary flashlight, pendulum, dowsing rods, although we do use a recorder, spirit box, K2, and a few other choice gadgets. But you told me you actually use the Ouija board on a regular basis, something I would never do. Please explain your reasons why.
It comes from the point of skepticism in that if I'm going to prove to myself that ghosts exist, the most common route everyone thinks of is the Ouija board. I'm not a psychic, otherwise it would be perfectly simple. So, like you say, electrical meters that we use on ghost hunts or torches could be affected by the environment or battery failure. So my first thought was, no, I want the spirit to get as close to me as possible. And allegedly, a Ouija board is the way to go. If they're so dangerous, there must be the direct link. So I was like, let's do it. I mean, I went on a ghost hunt with another team first before I did anything. And they used yes/no boards, which is a Ouija board without anything other than a yes and a no. So fingers on the planchette or the glass. And that was my first hands-on experience. But then I had the hurdle of, well, who's pushing this? So that's really, really hands-on why I went with the Ouija board. I was all into disproving our influence on it. And then I was going to be, okay, now give me the information to prove it. So that I thought that's going to be the quickest way to prove to me myself that ghosts exist.
A lot of people would compare the Ouija board to dowsing rods and pendulum even, because you are looking for a yes and no answer with the pendulum, and with the dowsing rods you're looking for them to open or close, which is not far off from yes and no. So it can be compared to a Ouija board in a different sense of the word. I know that we went on an investigation at a place called Burnbury Mansion, which is not too far from where I live locally, and we spent the night. And in every single room, they had a Ouija board table. So it was essentially a table made out of a Ouija board. And they had the stylus sitting there on the Ouija board. And like I said, I'm terrified of the Ouija boards for whatever reason. I'm fine with dowsing rods, I'm fine with the pendulum, but the Ouija board freaks me out. And this Ouija board was right beside my side of the bed. And as I'm walking, the darn thing jumped out at me. And I'm like, nope, I'm not talking to you. And that's the first and only time that's ever happened, but it seriously moved. And I thought, well, did I bump into the table? Did I knock into it? And when I picked up the stylus, it was as heavy as a paperweight.
Right.
So I know for a fact that I didn't hit the table and knock it. It moved on its own. It moved so gracefully for a thing as heavy as a paperweight. So it freaked me out.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's what you get into it for, isn't it? It's those little
Truly.
moments of miracles, almost, I think of them as.
That people try to explain away, but you know in your heart that it happened the way it did. So I'm never out there to try and convince anything of it, anyone of anything, anyhow. I just need to know it myself. So I really don't care what anybody else thinks, because that would get torn apart somewhere else. Somebody would say, "Oh no, that didn't happen," and "Oh, you hit the table," or whatever. So
it's impossible to prove anything to anyone other than yourself. Even in our team, we're all been together, 12 years or whatever, but everyone is still a different level of believer. Because I might go on one night and see something, and if the other person wasn't there, they can't really share that experience. So yeah, it's totally personal, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. We have our own experience to gauge our beliefs on, and it's great when you're all together and you can see something happen, or if that positive energy that you were all coming in with creates things, that special connection. I find that wonderful when that happens. But you're right. We all have our own personal experiences to gauge our beliefs on, and that's how we go by. And so, like you, my team, there are some that are more skeptical than others. Some that have come in thinking they had no gifts, to find out that they are gifted, which is very cool too. When you you awaken something in someone they never knew existed, which is really a lovely thing to experience.
Yeah.
But can you give me some examples of stories where some unusual things happened to you while using the Ouija board?
All right. Well, we started in my workplace, for example, and now my old workplace now, it used to be a tannery, which is where they dyed leather. And so it was a printer's in my time of working. But we'd turn up there on an evening, and we knew a guy whose dad used to work there, and like he would he did no information and things like that, and so we could sort of check out things that were said via a living relative for one thing, but we'd get the same sort of spirits coming through each time. There was a lad called Luke who didn't work at the tannery, but he had a motorcycle accident on the road outside. And it wasn't just that he came through one night, he was pretty much a resident. Now, they're drawn like moths to the flames. So when we opened up a board, first of all, you'd expect to get the people from the tannery or wherever we are. But then it would also expand to, further afield. And it just took that little bit longer for them to come and sort of queue up, as it were. So, yeah, we'd start talking to these regulars, and they became almost spiritual friends in a way. They'd be like, "We'll look after you." These one or two spirits would, "Oh, Luke's here again. Hiya, Luke. How you doing?" And he's like, "Yeah, just."
Oh, that is so cool.
Like, be careful, won't you? Because we're experimenting, we're pushing. What about not protecting ourselves before we do it? So in our early infancy of using the board, Luke and people like that would be like, just be careful. You've gone too far. You lot need to go home. It'd say, go home. Why? What have we done? I'll clean it up. I've protected you, and I'll clean up. So it started
Speaking of
like,
protection that you just mentioned, do you protect yourself in any other way? I mean, like, we come in and we tell spirit that we're there, in friendship and all that. And then a lot of us wear our protective stones, like I have on, and I have a protective necklace, and I use protective oils. And then when all is said and done, when we're done, we say a prayer and tell spirit they need to stay behind. They're not allowed to come, because we do try to help spirit into the light, but they don't always want to go into the light. So if they want to stay there, we tell them they can't come. What kind of protection do you usually put upon yourselves?
Well, we have a mantra. We'll sit down and I will lead this. We'll hold hands, close your eyes, imagine a white ball of light above your head. It basically draws a cocoon around each of us, then comes back up, and then passes to the left person, and we all get cocooned. That speeds up, and we're inside a sphere of light. Now, it's all just in our heads. Whatever you do will work just the same as what we do. It's
right.
It's the intention. It doesn't
Yes.
have to be even a belief. It's the fact that I think you need a psychological crutch that you can take back off, and you go home and you think, well, I was protected tonight. When I go home and something falls off my shelf that would have fallen off whether I was in or out, I can then say, it's not a ghost because I did protection. And I think if you sort of believe in it enough, or you just have to do it. So we do a protection, right, and then we try and remember to undo it. We don't always. There's been times when we've experimented in the early days, as I said, of not doing protection. Now, over the years, that protection has morphed into being more of an invitation. I light us up in the same way and say it's protection. But really what I'm saying is, come towards us. Because we've had spiritual things where now I've started to question protection. I've been like, I don't think there actually is. You ask for protection and then you say, come and touch us. You can. And it's like, surely that's contradictory. Do you want them to influence you personally, or don't you? We couldn't seem to. So anyway, I do protection, but I also say it's an invitation. Please come and be respectful. And then at the end of the night, I say, right, stay where you are. We're going. We're turning off from being in contact with you respectfully, and we're leaving. It's more of a psychological barrier, I think.
Protective barrier, yeah. So please continue with your story with Luke.
Yeah, Luke would basically watch over us and guide us in a way. But then when we weren't there, there's been the odd time we'd been in cities, 30 miles away. And I remember Luke would come through and it's like, oh, you're actually watching us here as well, But as for memorable things, we went to York, and in York, it's a medieval city in England. Now, we met a spirit that was above and beyond anything I'd ever encountered. When you asked for a bang, you got a bang. Objects falling off the tables. I mean, it was like, whoa, this is what I got into this for. Frightening, but this is what you generally ask for things and you get nothing in return. That's the 99%
right.
of the time. So we meet this spirit, and he actually started threatening us. Once we had moved a spirit on in the home, his home help, his cleaner, he was obsessed with her, and she was complaining to us that he was bullying all the time. So we moved her over, which made him really angry. And he's like, I'm going to kill you all. I am going to stop you all breathing when you sleep here tonight, the second night you're staying over. Now, all my team's women apart from myself. And they will look, Chris, we are so tired, we will have to fall asleep. And the first night we were terrified and didn't get any sleep. And now he's saying, when we do fall asleep, he's going to stop us breathing. And we've never witnessed anything like this before. He's different. So that was the first time we went, okay, we probably should not risk it. We're out of our depth here. So I remember that Ouija board session being a huge question mark of, all right, we're up against something. We need to go away. And we felt like we were running away.
Smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was really down to the women, because I'd not been there the first night. So I'm eager to crack on and continue and see what we can do. However, the spirit was completely refusing to compromise. He was just fuming at us. So it was the women who said, no, Chris, you don't know what it's like. You weren't here to experience night one. And you're not staying on night two. You're saying you're going back home. So we're not doing it. They refused, and we did leave. And COVID happened. And we ended up the next time we were able, we went to a cemetery near our homes, miles away from York. And I said, let's go to a cemetery and let's ask any of our spirit friends or people we don't even know, how do we deal with this situation? How do we deal with this guy? And the first person to come through was him, and started calling us all. Like, whoa, he's
waiting
here.
for you guys to come back again.
Yeah. And then it's like, oh, hi, I'm like, I'll try to stay in control. I really respect you, Sam. We loved coming over. We've left you alone. I hope you're all right. How are you doing? And uneasy. And he was like, just don't come back to my house. Don't come back to my house. I'm going to cause you problems. And then he went away, and we continued with our evening with other spirits of the cemetery. We go to another location. Who pops up? It's him again. Threatening us. I've been watching you. And I'd had experiences in my home, and it turned out all the team had been visited by him. So you tell your team that much, I've been visited by him, and then you keep it to yourself exactly what happened. Now I'm going to the bathroom, and when someone stood in the dark, and I'm like, oh, it just feels like someone's there. And I swore at him, basically. I said, not now, essentially. That was my, defense. And I went to bed. So then the next time I got on the session with him, I said, right, I think you were in my home. Is that right? And he's, yes. Tell me where you were. And it said the landing of my house. And what did I say to you? And he sort of swore back at me. And I said, yeah, I did say that, yeah. Therefore, I admit, you proved to me that you were there. My team didn't know what I said. So, and yeah, each of my team members had similar cases of he was with me. I know he was at my house visiting. So yeah, watching over us. Now, to cut to the end of this story, we did return to his house despite threats, because over the years of our doing the other Ouija boards, he would keep interrupting, and yet the energy, the whole evening would change when he arrived, because he'd bang, or he'd make you freezing cold, or he'd be on the roof of the building.
So it's almost like he's coming into your place of privacy, but he doesn't want you in his. So,
yeah. But basically, we got to know him, and I got to say, look, Sam, every time you come, you're amazing. You do things that no other spirits do. I've got nothing but respect for you. Now, he always said he respected me because I was a guy, whereas all the women in my team, he saw as I owned them. That's how he, that was his mindset.
He interpreted it.
He had a problem with women, and he thought that they were my women. So basically, I never had to be too worried, because I always thought, well, he actually quite likes me. I'm a guy. So it was my other, teammates who were like, hey, it's all right for you. We were laughing. We went back, and I opened up by saying, look, we are back. We mean you no disrespect, because you've been nothing but awesome. Even chasing us down, in actual fact, you've made us just think what a superstar you are. You've given us all that we want out of ghost hunting. And he ended up, after these years later, he mellowed, and we ended the evening at his house another 2 nights, where we're actually friends with him and respect him, and we came to an alliance finally. Okay, it took 4 years or whatever, but now I feel like he's on my side, and he told us we had 2 attachments, and we were like, really? From when? It basically boiled down to when we'd been experimenting with silly rituals, and you can't conjure demons or pentagrams, and so it's all nonsense. I'll show you. So with me and Lucy on his own, who my teammate, we did everything you could think. We put pentagrams on the floor. We did voodoo dolls. We were just trying on a live stream to show these things don't do anything. It's myth. Lo and behold, we get to Sam's in York, and he's like, you have got 2 things on you, and I will get rid of them for you.
Do you know what they were?
Yeah, he said one was called Ash, one was called Samael, and he told us about who they were linked with. They gave another name. One was linked to a Sarah, and when you Googled it, it checks out that these things were supposedly on the demon list. I take all this with a pinch of salt. I'm just providing the experience as it happened. Okay, I'm not this actually happened. So seemingly he fought these demons off. What was terrifying about it was that he asked us to do Estes method. So one of us went upstairs in his house with headphones on, just listening to a word app.
Right.
So we can hear what she's saying through our phones connected. And we're on the Ouija board. And my person upstairs is saying, oh, Ash is here. Get Chris's eyes. So I'm downstairs like, whoa, this is actually quite creepy. She doesn't know what's going on downstairs. Demons are here. And I'm like, okay, let everyone keep their hands held, and she's just spouting. It sounded like a battle that this spirit, Sam, was getting these demons offers. And eventually it just went silent, and he's like, it's done. Sam was like, it's done. I've helped you out. And I was like, that is intense. That is us bonded together now, Sam. So our biggest enemy turned into our biggest helper. And it made me realise that we were very rude to barge into his house, get rid of this woman he was obsessed with, try and banish him from his own home, but he was too strong. We ran away thinking, oh, he's a horrible spirit. Really, he's like who the hell are you to come into my house and disrupt everything and then walk off like I'm the bad guy? Do you know what I mean?
I totally get what you're saying, but you know, I would have done the same thing if there was a spirit that was asking for my help and saying he's entrapping me, and I would have certainly done everything that I could to help that spirit move over, because we had an experience like that not too long ago at Penhurst Asylum in Pennsylvania here in the US. And we were collaborating with another team from Redbird Curiosities. And she had gone there several times, and she's a psychologist for children. So she works specifically with children.
Yeah.
And it was natural that when she went to Penhurst, she would connect with the children's spirits that were there.
Yeah.
So the first time that she was there, she had actually helped a child move on. And then when we were there the second time, we connected with another child who was being bullied by other older children that lived at this asylum. And it ultimately ended in this child's death. So naturally in death they're together, but this older child was responsible for this younger child dying when he was in life living there. And so this poor soul could not get peace, even in death, as a ghost living in Penhurst, because that bully was still there. So we did whatever we could to help that child move on into the light so that he wouldn't have to endure being bullied by the bully that killed him in life. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
So in a situation like that, you know, you might end up having an ally in the end with that spirit, but if they're controlling another spirit for their own personal gain, it's not right either. I mean, we were in another home on another occasion where there were elementals that were holding the spirits in the house hostage. They wouldn't let them talk to us. They wouldn't let them do anything because they were in control. And I don't like that. So I would have done whatever I could to help them move on too. I think you did the right thing.
You've touched on something there, an elemental. I'm fascinated because I have come upon one elemental. It called itself the Ram, and it was in a woman who was sectioned at one time. She did have mental illness. She had been to an asylum against her will, okay? But she was out, and she was saying, there's something in my home making me not stay there. So she wasn't living her own home. And she basically got us in to see what was going on. Now, the instant reaction is, oh, she might be on a medication, it might be that. But no, throughout the evening, an elemental came through. And now, what do you know about elementals? Because I was just like, I don't really know what they are, other than a natural thing that was never dead.
Never was human, right? I did not know anything about elementals. It just so happened that the people that I was with there that night both had experiences with elementals.
Yeah.
And I've just learned about them from speaking to other paranormal investigators. So having that experience was very unusual for me. This elemental disguised itself as a young boy, but because of its movements and different things in its bodily features, you could tell that it wasn't a real boy. So you knew that there was something off, almost like a black-eyed kid. You've heard about black-eyed children. You just know there's something off, just in the way they move, the way they carry themselves. And because we were speaking to an elderly man spirit there, and he was telling us that that other spirit was not letting him speak, the two people that I was with who were seers, they could actually see the spirit and communicate. They knew that it was an elemental and that it wanted control of whoever was in the house. I don't even know why they're there. Why I don't understand, but I'm still learning about them, but it was definitely not ever human.
Yeah.
And we felt that there was a portal in this home, which made sense because it would have come through that portal, which brings a lot of different things in at different times. So,
well, what you've said there also rings true. This lady said, I saw a floating, shimmering oval of light like water. And so instantly we're like, well, that sounds like a portal, I think. Not that I know what portals are, but do you know what I mean? It's a learning thing, isn't it? And we're not, you can't really be an expert in it. How do you say, I'm an expert in elementals? It's like, no, you're not. But yeah, we're sort of all fishing in the dark, aren't we, to try and understand these unknowable things.
And we're all evolving and learning. I mean, there's so many different things that I didn't even know or was aware of when I first started out doing the paranormal investigating. I mean, I've sensed spirit ever since I was a kid, but I never really started educating myself about it until I was 30, when the day my dad died. That's when it was like an awakening for me. And
Yeah.
from that point on, I educated myself over the years, but that was really the extent of it. It wasn't until I wrote my first true account haunting book that it was almost like the universe was throwing it in my lap and saying, wake up already, lady. We want you to do something with this. And it was like, wow, okay, I'm supposed to do something with this. And that's what threw me headfirst into paranormal investigating, because people were coming to me out of the woodwork saying, oh, I know you wrote this book about true accounts. I have something going on in my house. Could you bring your paranormal team in? And that's how it really all started. So I'm a late bloomer, but in this short span of time, I've learned so much that some of it I can't even wrap my head around.
Yeah.
But it's there and it's happening and it's real and I can't explain it. But I feel like I learn every single day more. And although I didn't know much about the elementals, now I know something. And when the discussion comes up, I learn something more, or I'm educating or teaching somebody else something. And that's what it's all about, us helping each other to learn and grow so that we can really bring awareness to the paranormal and its existence, the reality of it.
Yeah, it really benefits me, you just saying a story that checks out with the one I had. That emboldens my understanding, like, well, yeah, that must be how it plays out. So the next time, if I ever come up against an elemental, I'll be looking for the similar things that we've both admitted. Yeah. Fantastic, isn't
I
it?
know you said, I'm sorry, what?
It's fantastic. I love it.
Yes. You said that you're not a psychic, but do you have any other special gifts or talents that help you personally when you're paranormal investigating?
No, I would say skepticism is my biggest power. No longer anymore, I guess. But people say, like as you did, how do you protect yourself? I think a complete ignorance is my protection in a way. With demons or anything like that, the Ouija board. Just let's take the Ouija board. I'll use the Ouija board, shove it under my bed. They're in my bedroom. When I first started, I'd make different ones. I ended up with like 6 or 7 under my bed and around my bedroom. And other people are like baffled as, oh, I could never do that. I think absolutely nothing.
I couldn't.
I think nothing of it. I think nothing of it because I don't buy into the.
It's in my head. It's in my head.
Yeah, it's how everyone, if I put a spider on your lap, some people love spiders and keep them tarantulas and all this. Some people are terrified, but to the spider, they're all spiders. They don't have any different feelings about you. It's like a Ouija board to me is just a printed it's nothing. It's nothing. I believe it's like protection. It's we open something up by our intention of sitting around this board. It's not so much the board itself. The board is just something for us to focus on. And yes, the glass moves, but I do believe that we move the glass without understanding that we're doing it, but the spirits are moving the glass to us. And I say that because I've done blindfold experiments. I've had a glass upon glass, thinking if I touch the top glass, surely if it's spiritual energies, they can move the bottom glass because we're putting our energies into it, but they never could. And when I put a deck of cards on a planchette, if the planchette was moving first, the bottom card would be the one to move, but it's always the top card. So I'm saying we definitely move the planchette. And I've got no problem saying that because the magic comes into it when we've been led by spirits in an old abandoned farmhouse, go up to the bedroom, which was covered in books. It's like in there you'll find a red diary. So we're hunting through, here's this red book, it's a diary. And then she goes, go in that other room and there's a blue book and it's all my finances. And then we've got spirits to tell us where our lost car keys are that have been lost for 6 months. And you're like, well, we didn't know that. So even if we're pushing it, it doesn't explain how we're finding out knowledge that we don't know. Do you know what I mean? So the magic comes in.
Yeah.
The spirits are leading us. But when we're all blindfolded,
I think it's great that you. Go ahead.
when we're all blindfolded, I'll put colours in front of the team. Now, without blindfolds on, I'll say, go to red. Right, yeah, red, go blue, blue. Right, everyone put blindfolds on, and I mix them up, the colours. I'll say, go to red now. And more often than not, it gets it wrong. It might get one right, but that's 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5. It seems to be that they need our eyes. So I'll take one person's blindfold off, the other 3 on, and that person doesn't even seem to need to have their hand on all the time, but it needs some sort of, the spirit needs someone around the board to see what it's looking at. That's where I'm at. Hopefully we'll
Like an
learn
affirmation, sort of.
I honestly don't know, but I think that if you blindfold all the people, it doesn't work. Now, you could say there's a skepticism there for me, which is like, yeah, but that means the people around the board are somehow leading it. But because I've had other experiments where I will, if let's say you're sat at my board, my Ouija board, everybody else is blindfolded, and I say to you, think of a colour. Now you just think of a colour, and the glass would go to the colour in front of that person, in front of the correct colour out of the ones on the board, just by you thinking the colour.
Telepathy.
Because could be telepathy. There's always.
Well, like this is going to be kind of like when somebody says, "Oh, you're the one who moved it." Well, I've also seen and heard other opinions saying that they use you to move it. Essentially, as if they're within you and they use your power and energy to move it. And that they require that energy that you possess in order to move it. So, yeah, are we moving it? Not intentionally. It's not like I intentionally am making something move, but they're utilizing the energy that my body produces to move it. So there's a general argument there about people saying, well, you moved it. And no, it's the spirit that moved it within me. And it's kind of the same when you're saying think it, and it's responding to your thought. And I think it's also been referred to as telepathy in a sense of the word, if that makes sense.
Well, like we'll get answers halfway through my question. I'll say, so how many times? And it'll go to, and I'll go, oh, right. It answers it quicker than I'm saying it, because we also say, did you know we were coming tonight? Yeah, every time. In fact, we knew you were coming. We're ready. We've checked you out.
Oh, I believe that. I firmly believe that. And I tell people when I'm going to their home to investigate, even though I'm sure that they're going to know we're coming, I tell those homeowners or business owners, tell the spirits that you have people coming tonight to talk to them. So I do try and prepare them, even though I feel like they already know we're coming anyway.
Yeah.
I feel it's important that you give spirit that acknowledgement. You have to acknowledge them. Especially if you're in their space. You're in their space. They're not in your space.
Yeah.
And that's what is a misconception to a homeowner. Well, this is my house. I pay for it. Yeah, well, you don't realize that they were here before you. It's kind of like a city person moving into the country. You're moving into a wilderness. Don't feed the bears. Don't feed the raccoons. Yeah. Keep the distance because it's their space. They live a certain way. It's kind of the same thing. And you want to respect that spirit and acknowledge them because they only know their space and their time, because you don't know how long they've been there. It could have been from like the 1800s. It could have been from the 1600s. It could have been from whenever, especially like you were saying before, the spirit who felt that connection to you as a male, that you were like king of the women or owner of the women. He may have came from an era where it was viewed that way. And that's why he perceived you as the male, so you were the head of the harem, so to speak.
That's what he
said. That's all
yeah.
he knows, and that was his connection to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It was outdated, and now he did use her. He raped her. to be fair. That's what he did. And we were like, that's absolutely terrible. But he was like, no, I'm allowed to. She's mine. I own her. I pay her wages. She's my slave almost. She's a second-class citizen.
See?
I can do what I want. And I was like, different times, mate. Different times. We'll have to agree to disagree on that one, you know?
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have had that without God, would I?
I'm sorry, say that again?
I would not have had all that story without having that conversation through a Ouija board, because we're not psychic. So how else would I have had such a great story?
Yeah. It's true. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I know COVID changed all for the world, and paranormal investigating was no different. In fact, I had bookings every weekend, and then wham, we got slammed with COVID, and it all abruptly ended. It was a really long, hard road getting back on track. Correct me if I'm wrong, but your book, Into the Darkness, speaks to your paranormal endeavors before COVID and going into it, correct?
Correct, yes. Childhood up to that era. Yeah. Basically.
So tell me.
Sorry, yeah, basically it's about I was at maybe about 6, I would say, when I saw something in the bakery where we lived. So I go to bed and I feel in the middle of the night my covers wafted off me, or lifted off me, and a load of wind go, like you do in summer, you fan yourself with your blanket. So I wake up and I look, and there's this like hovering gingerbread shaped guy floating at the end of my bed, darker than the room, which wasn't 100% dark. Okay. So I scream for my parents, but I'm screamed so much that nothing comes out. It's just the air that comes out. So I duck under my covers, and that is all I remember. I vaguely remember thinking about coming out, and then I didn't. So I didn't like that house anyway. I come down at breakfast and tell all my family, and as a 6-year-old, you don't get believed. It's like,
oh my God, Chris, your story is identical to mine. I was around the same age, and I was in my room, and I was visited by this darker than the room shadow man who visited me every single night when I lived in that bedroom. And I would scream, and no one would hear me scream, and I would run past him to my parents' room. One time he actually grabbed me and held me back, and then finally let me go, and I ran. And of course, like you said, you were not believed. My mom said, it was just a dream. It was just a dream. But it wasn't until I actually moved from that bedroom down into the basement room that I actually found peace. And I know now as an adult that he was just trying to get my attention because he knew that I could see him. But tell that to a 6-year-old who has parents that don't believe that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? Amazing coincidence.
Yeah.
But yeah. I did not get grabbed by it, thank God. And I only saw it the one time. But because basically for the next 10, 20 years, as I'm growing up, I'm thinking, you probably didn't see it. It never happened again. And you start rationalizing it as time goes by. But it got me onto the paranormal. I would just absorb it, finding answers and loving the idea, but being scared. Into my 20s, when I moved into a house on my own, and things started to happen in my house, like the objects would suddenly be in the middle of my front room rather than on my couch around the edges. And then the TV would come on at 3 a.m. and I'd go downstairs and it was on full and all just static. And I'm like, something's trying to get my attention, or am I watching too many ghost things? But, yeah, you'd hear walking around, and you think you were having like a home invasion and stuff. But I was scared, but I was always like, you're just thinking it's a ghost because you're into ghosts. So either go and see a ghost or prove it isn't a ghost. So I'd go down with a 50-50. I might see an apparition, which would be brilliant, but it would be terrifying.
Sure. Yeah.
But I wouldn't catch anything. However, luckily, that sort of "am I going crazy" was stopped by my friend who was doing up my lounge floor from carpet to laminate flooring, wooden flooring, when we were moving. And he was working away, and he saw a woman on the stairs to the cellar and just pegged it. He just left, he dropped his tools and left. He said, "I've just seen a woman, and I'm not going back without my dad because I need to get my tools." And I'm like, it sounds like you're pranking me, but he wasn't. And then after that, my partner at the time, she didn't believe in any of it, but knew these stories. And she's going to the loo in the middle of the night, looks down the, she sort of glances down the stairs, and then she's in the bathroom. But she's like, "I thought I just saw a woman on the stairs, but I am not telling Chris that in the morning. There's no way I'm having that conversation. So I'm going to look my head back out and see it was a coat, it was a shadow, and explain it." And she goes, "I could not see
Couldn't
anything
explain it.
to explain it." And then as I was selling up, things escalated. Footsteps above me when I was in the cellar. I'd hear my friend, what I thought was my friend, walking along. And then the actual door to the room I was in would open, but no one stood there. And I'm in this cellar, like that's the only exit. I'm like, okay. Yeah. It became more, but I never saw anything, but it was evident there was something there. And it was only like maybe 5-10 years after that we moved out, and I thought, right now I've got to do this. I'm going to go on a ghost hunt for myself, and either prove it or disprove it. So I started this team, and it's all about, in the book, it's all about my experience as a kid through this house up to going on my first investigation and starting a team, and the little adventures we had up to COVID. And it basically logs that journey from, I had a weird experience, I had possibly weird experiences in living on my own, through to going on an investigation and starting my own team, gathering like-minded people, testing on the Ouija board, and it even mentions up to the first time I went to York and met this spirit we've been talking about earlier. And then COVID happened. So that's where it ends. And basically now I'm writing book 2, where it continues to where we went back to York, and whatever comes after that. I mean, activities ramped up ever since we did that first York investigation, whereas before Sam seemed like a one on his own. Now more often when I ask for a bang, I get a huge bang in response. And I've locked the place down, and the people sat with me are the only people in the building. And it's fascinating to me that, I don't know if you found, the more you do it, the more the spirits learn to trust you, and they give you a little bit more, So yeah, I'm just excited to get back to it, but obviously it's been cold recently, and
I'm sure that the spirits have a hard time trusting. I mean, because other groups out there, some of them are really disrespectful to spirit, whether they're trying to create a lie or not. If they're legitimate in what they're finding, that sort of thing. It's really hard for spirit to trust, because there are so many dupers out there and people that run away when you're supposed to be running to, or like I said, being. I imagine it's kind of like in life where we need to try and build trust with somebody else. I'm sure it's the same way in death. I mean, I've always said that if somebody was nice in life, they're nice in death. If they were nasty in life, they're nasty in death. And it's just that human factor that you still cling to even in death. You're still going to have those human emotions to try and connect on that personal level, like you said, gain that trust.
Yeah.
Are you skeptical of some of the other groups and the proof that they unearth?
I can't afford to be skeptical anymore, because I think some of the things that we've had recently, I can tell you a little story that is so good. Your instant reaction is, nah. You know, when you watch other people's ghost videos, you have tendency to go, nah, that's rubbish. And yet I think people must watch our stuff and think, no. And so I can't cast a skepticism, because I know that that's what other people will be doing at my things. And it's like, well, I lived it, mate. I know it happened. So my example for that is when we went back to York, to Sam's house, as we're about to make friends with him. A little girl came through in York, and I think she was, let's say she was 6. It's on, we have it on our live stream videos on YouTube or whatever. But this girl called Norma comes through talking about a lost shoe, which we found amusing. Hey, what do you mean you've lost your shoe? Yeah, well, lost my shoe. Where is it? I don't know. Well, where did you have it last? We were sort of giggling, you know. And then she's like, oh, it's red and it's in a stream. Well, how did it get in the stream? And then the story turned sinister. Or like, I think she said Hatman, and he's with my dad. And she said enough information that one of the viewers, you know, I don't know if you live stream, but you get these comments going down as you.
Yeah.
And someone had said, oh my God, Norma, the red shoe murder in York. Apparently it was a thing. Those keywords triggered. So I had one of my teammates say, just Google red shoe murder. And she's like, yeah. Oh, I sat away from the board. Yep, there's something here. So then she could see the details, and she could ask us at the board, ask her, like, where her body was found. And so then we'd say what we found, you know, wasteland, behind the house. And my teammates going, absolutely right. And we were like, you're joking. We don't even know what's going on. So then it was a case of, now this is not even, it wasn't even from us. It's from somebody watching us online. And
right.
And this girl, Norma Dale, told us who found her, where her body was, things that the cold case had been brought up again, and who did it. These things were something the family was actually looking to get answers for. And this Norma was just telling us, and there was a picture of Norma on the internet. So my teammate was like, can you describe yourself, Norma? Oh yeah, I've got like dark hair, and you see a picture of her and it's like, oh my God. And it was such an amazing moment. But watching online, I just thought, obviously, to watch that back when someone else did it, you'd be like, well, that's just acted. That's just all planned out. They knew they were going to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And I give my word that you, as you see it, is as it happened. And I think you can see the shock and the surprise as it unfolds. But, you know, you see a comment so fake and you're like, Jesus Christ. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Who did she say? Who did she say killed her?
I think it was this hat man, a friend of her dad. She had seen them kissing, and she wasn't supposed to see this guy kissing her dad, obviously. He'd said he was going to the rugby or the football, and yeah, basically she saw something she shouldn't see, and she was murdered for it. Yeah. So it was obviously like not something that two men could admit to back in old-fashioned York. Yes. And she paid the consequence for that.
Oh, so sad.
Yeah. But it's just absolutely amazing that we could verify it.
Yeah.
That doesn't normally happen. You normally through the Ouija board,
fell in your lap.
And you're like, oh, I'm John, and it was 1954 when I was born, and all you go is, okay, there's no verification.
Right.
You know, whereas this was like, oh, there's a news article that actually backs up what she's saying. We've had that twice, to be fair, but that's twice in 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I try to tell people all the time, they get this visual from the media and television that you go on a paranormal investigation and you're going to be overwhelmed with evidence, and it's not reality. I tell them that you can go to an investigation, have absolutely nothing happen, and when you have something happen, that's why we get so excited, because it's so unexpected. And then when you get a lot of stuff happening, then you're just thrilled to death because that's so unusual. And I do feel having more people there who are gifted or have that power of positive thinking or that positive energy do help to create more activity, but it's not 100% guaranteed either. So when you do get something, you have to be thrilled. And like you said, twice happening in 12 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you say, you might have a sighting or you might have a good knock or something. Those things last seconds.
Yeah.
And although they're amazing, when you think you've been out for 3 or 4 hours, it's like all I'm taking is a grain of, oh, do you remember that? Well, what about the hour that we sat asking and nothing happened? Yeah, well, that's just part of the fishing, isn't it? You know.
It's very true. Very true. What do you find the hardest part about being a paranormal investigator is for you anyway?
Oh, getting locations, without a doubt. Yeah, we're nobodies. We just do it for hobby. We have, it's not like I can turn up and say, hey, it's me, let us in. I know we can be trusted. We're adults. It's like, let me in your workplace, whether you're there or not. But I'm a nobody, so it's like, no, I won't.
It'll help that you've written these books because my team are blown away half the time that I'm able to get as many investigations as I do. But part of it is because I am very ambitious about it too. So if I think a place is haunted and it's a possibility, I'll usually reach out or contact that location. But it's also because I write these books and people now know this is what I do and come to me with their personal homes or businesses that have something happening and ask us to come in and do an investigation. So, and also those connections in the paranormal world also help. Collaborating with other teams is really wonderful. You get to know other wonderful people in the field, but you can also collaborate on investigations with them, which we've been doing the last 2 years a lot. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying expanding on the horizons of paranormal people in the industry and other locations that I wouldn't have thought much about.
Yeah.
So
that's really good. That's really good to hear that. Yeah, I think you're actually onto something there. That I do have a product now where I can say, look, I'm genuinely into it, and you can even experience some of the things I've done.
Put a blurb in your book at the end that says that you are a working paranormal investigator. You will take on investigations if they have any interest in reaching out to you. Put your email in your book and you'd be surprised. I'm not going to say they're going to swarm in, but over time, people start to know who you are. And that's where I've gotten a number of really great investigative spots because they've come to a book signing and said, well, I'm living in a haunted apartment. And then that last investigation that we did turned out to be a real whopper. Let me tell you, this elderly woman comes up to me at a book signing and says that she lives in this haunted apartment and her husband are getting out as soon as they possibly can, but it's affecting her and the tenants above her and the tenants next to her. And would I like to bring my paranormal team into the building before they leave? And I was like, yeah. And it ended up being a manor house that was formerly owned by a mobster guy. Wow. And now it was transformed into apartments. So they sectioned it off and made it 4 or 5 apartments that were all extremely active. And on top of it, one of the apartments was lived in by 2 women, one of which who was extremely sensitive to spirit. They liked to do their own paranormal investigating, not having any experience in it before. Of course, they took risks that they probably shouldn't have and went to an asylum at one point and brought home something from the site. So now you bring in something home, a souvenir from the site, into your living space that was once owned by a former mobster. So put those two together and think about why we're having so much crazy shit going on in that place. It was unbelievable. I mean, we had to sage ourselves after we left because it was so heavy. but it was warranted a really great amount of evidence that night. So you'd be surprised at how you would meet people and get investigations out of just those connections.
Yeah, I'm not very good at reaching out, you know. I think that's where I like, that's kind of why I have the women on my team, because they make up for my failings. They have the empathy. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When we come up against a little kid or something, I'll just talk to it the same as I talk to everybody. Whereas the women are like, oh, it's so cute, and they're very emotional. Whereas I'm very a guy. I'm a bloke. I don't do that. So yeah, they really make up where I fail. I think they're really good
Well,
for
that's
that.
good. That makes
Yeah.
for a happy mix of people's strengths against others' weaknesses. That's
But
no, that's good.
on the other hand, though, where I'm the one that's meant to be doing the organising, I'm not great at it. You know, they would write a very flourishing email to someone. We'd love to come to your place. I'm just like, I'm an investigator. Can we come investigate? It's just totally,
Yeah.
no. All right, fine.
Oh, that's so funny.
Mm.
Oh, well,
But it's a hobby.
before we close out the show, Chris, please go ahead and let everyone know how they can find all the information on you and your group and this wonderful book that you've written.
Well, the team Whitehouse Investigations is on Facebook, and predominantly my YouTube channel is Whitehouse Investigations Paranormal Group. Now, Whitehouse is one word, otherwise you'll find the American White House.
Yes, yeah, that happened to me. I went to Google and I was like, no, I don't want the president.
It's a terrible group name, but it is what it is. My book, Into the Darkness, is on Amazon only. You can get it on Kindle. If you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you'll be able to read it for free. And Instagram, but basically YouTube. I'm trying to get people to our YouTube channel. Now I have a second YouTube channel called Talking Paranormal, which hopefully you will be an upcoming guest on as we sit down and basically do this with other people. I've had TV's Dave Schrader on there. I'm hoping to get some British ghost hunters, Yvette Fielding and the like, on here. So not just celebrities, but people like us, ghost hunters. And I'm going to move on to people who clients of ours maybe who have had, tell us about their experiences at home. So yeah, that's called Talking Paranormal, also on YouTube. That's pretty
I
much
would love to be a guest on your show. Thank you for asking. Are you on TikTok also?
it. Begrudgingly, I can't stand it. But yes, I use it as some sort of advert platform here and there, but I wouldn't promote it myself. However, my teammate, paranormal_girl_, she does that branch. She's got that on her own. She's her own on Paranormal Girl. But yeah, she kind of takes care of our live streams through there. So I've mentioned that. Check her out on there.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. I know I'm getting into TikTok now for the last year. Everybody was saying, yeah, it really is something that you should do. So I'm trying to promote that end of things too. You always try and find out what's the best place to let people know you're there. And so, yeah, I'm on Instagram as well. So I know it's a struggle trying to keep marketing yourself while you're continuing to do your investigating and your writing. Yeah. It's juggling 100 different things at one time. So
exactly,
it is what it is. But you are out of the UK, correct?
Correct. Yes, the very middle.
So for the listeners on this network, Paranormal UK, if you're out there and you have an investigation that you want to happen, please reach out to Chris. I'm sure he would welcome the opportunity.
Thank you. That's exactly what I need from my team, to ask out like
that. Well, hopefully we'll get you an investigation or two.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate having you on today.
Thank you so much.
And if you liked listening to this week's episode and you're all into things paranormal, check out my other show, Eleanor Wagner's Creepin' It Real, out of the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, which is available wherever you get your podcasts. And if any of you are interested in reading any of my books, you can find the links to them on my website, authoreleanorwagner.com. I write about the history of the town and the location. I add the paranormal story to the mix and finish it all off with photos and evidence. Until next time.